Good evening, welcome to Business Live. Coming up tonight, Cocoa Board hits back at Bloomberg over claims of $1.2 billion arrears owed cocoa farmers. Ministry of Finance and GRA launch new tax audit and quality assurance department. We'll tell you all about it. And Ghana needs over $50 million to revive its rail sector. Those stories and others coming up in this half hour of business news. Do stay with us. With the cocoa sector tonight, and Ghana's cocoa regulator, Cocoa Board, has described recent reports by Bloomberg on their struggle to pay cocoa farmers as inaccurate. The Bloomberg report revealed that Cocoa Board is struggling to pay purchasing agents for beans bought from farmers as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Charles Aite has been engaging the head of corporate affairs at Cocoa Board on this and other matters related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
According to Bloomberg, the arrears of Cocoa Board to cocoa farmers was as high as 1.2 billion cedis, a development which questions Cocoa Board's viability amid the coronavirus pandemic. Head of Corporate Affairs for Cocoa Board, Aboagye-Wiafe, argued that only 3 out of 54 cocoa buying companies are yet to be paid by the regulator.
It's not a case to say that we are struggling so much that we are unable to pay these companies. Yes, we made some payment to the 3 companies I'm referring to just last month, and our expectation is that by close of week we'll pay the 3 companies everything we owe them in full. So it's not a case that we are struggling and we are not finding solution as to how to pay these companies.
So far, there are concerns over the fate of the $1.3 billion cocoa syndication loan. Looking at the turn of events, Cocoa Board believes accessing the syndication for the next cocoa crop season will not be affected in any way.
Obviously, this is the time you would expect that we have gone to do our roadshow, but because of COVID, like the president said, we are not in normal times. So the normal way of doing things has changed a little bit, but we are on course, and our expectation is that we will be able to raise the money needed for our operations next year. So yes, we are on course. The figure that was initially pegged has not changed. We are still working with the same figure. Of course, if it happens that based on our projections something would change, we shall communicate it. But as I speak to you today, that has not changed.
The coronavirus pandemic has had an effect on the global value chain of cocoa. While difficult to estimate future import and export sales, the pandemic more broadly is biting hard on a sector that already contributes up to 10% of Ghana's GDP.
Now, the Minister of Finance and the Commissioner General of the GRA have launched the new Tax Audit and Quality Assurance Department aimed at improving the audits of Ghana's tax regime. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta believes it is time for such a department to deepen confidence in taxpayers, especially when COVID-19 is eroding revenue margins. There's more in this report.
Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta decried the low level of confidence by taxpayers in the service rendered by auditors on tax returns. He believes the Tax Audit and Quality Assurance Department will go a long way to address these outstanding issues.
In terms of our experience, you look at registration, and we have up to 5 million unregistered taxpayers, both individual and entities. Filing and payments, we have about 400 to 600 million Ghana cedis in uncollected debt due to bottlenecks, lack of transparency, and inconsistent application of debt recovery actions. On the compliance audits and debt management side, at least 300 to 400 million in missed infractions and post-clearance audit due to absence of best practices in case management systems. We will make these changes, and I really would like to acknowledge Commissioner General for this bold step. We will step on toes, we will make some honest mistakes, but we will have open doors for dialogue and feedback. will aggressively venture into uncharted waters, will be friendly. We will need allies, and above all, we will need the support of all Ghanaians to collect all revenue due to the state.
On his part, Commissioner General of the GRA, Amishadai Owusu-Amoah, stated that the GRA will leverage on the Tax and Audit Assurance Department to expand the tax net and improve revenue generation.
We will also make use of data such that we ensure that we'll be able to match our data from one government agency into our systems, from one government agency into both the domestic and the customs system, to ensure that at any point in time, if there's somebody who has in database in DVLA, it's at the same time being able to pay the equivalent of whatever he's demonstrating DVLA in taxes.
Showing that certain returns can be filed and payments made directly into the account, but there are challenges. But that has its challenges. For example, it is sometimes difficult for the GRA to determine the type of tax for which payment was made, and in addition, the period for which the payment was made.
And it's not just revenue margins that are being impacted. The impact of COVID-19 on the volume of remittance flows has been dramatic and swift, valued at a record $554 billion in 2019. Now, these transfers are expected to decline by almost 20% in 2020, according to the latest World Bank forecast. Now, this translates into a drop of $110 billion in available resources to cover for basic needs of millions of migrant families. Now, in Ghana, remittances contributed an estimated $3.8 billion to the economy, supporting many households. Today, Ghana joins the rest of the world to commemorate the International Day of Family Remittances. And to explore this further, I'm joined by Eric Kwame Akumenyi, who is Migration and Development Officer at the International Organization for Migration. Great to have you tonight on the program. So this year's Day of Family Remittances focuses on building resilience in times of crisis. Explain to us the relevance of this to recipients of remittances.
Thank you very much, Daryl, and good evening to our viewers. So this year's International Day of Family Remittances is looking at building resilience in times of crisis, because we see that already the pandemic is impacting the volumes and also how much is sent in by way of remittances.
Right.
And we already know remittances is a major lifeline to most households, and therefore they are stretched in this era where the volumes are reducing and what have you. So IOM, together with its partners at the UN level, has set aside the 16th of June of every year to commemorate International Day of Family Remittances, where we raise awareness on the issue around remittances and how migrant families can be supported in terms of their contribution to development. And as you rightly stated, in Ghana, remittances contributed to about $3.8 billion.
Right.
And for us, this is quite substantial. And Ghana, I think, is the second highest in terms of recipients of remittances in the sub-region. So it's an important day for us, and it is key that we support families in times of this crisis.
So the World Bank is forecasting a 20% fall in remittances due to COVID-19. Tell us the kind of support and initiative government can put in place to assist recipients here in Ghana.
I think that is a very good question. What we see from IOM study is that remittances basically are used for consumption. So monies are coming in, monies are picked up by the banks, and then what you see is straight into consumption activities, buying of items, construction, and what have you. But what we believe in is that the Bank of Ghana, the Ministry of Finance, particularly the Financial Sector Division, can work together to address issues around remittances. So for instance, we know there are issues of high cost of transaction. So if you're sending in 200 US Ghana cedis, you are likely to pay a little around 7% of that amount in cost of transaction. And that also takes away a lot from the recipient. So if the government can begin to look at this, how do we address this issue? We address this issue through market competition. So if we can open up the space, allow a lot more players in the space, and use issues of technology to make sure remittances can terminate easily on the wallets and then on the mobile phones of recipients. This can also drive down the cost of transaction. The Bank of Ghana can also look at working with the various stakeholders to look at ideation, the process of ideation. How do we develop innovative products on the market to make sure remittances are not just used for consumption, but then these are backed by remittance products. So financial institutions can introduce remittance-backed products. I know fintech like ZPay has what we refer to as the Remit Insure and Remit Savings, where a fraction of the remittance that are received are set aside as savings, in a scheme. And this, in a way, help the recipient to fall back in times of crisis on these savings that they make. So these are areas that the Bank of Ghana can support together with the Ministry of Finance and all the stakeholders. Yes, because
I was reading this, that information we're getting from you, that Ghana in 2018 received $3.8 billion in remittances. So what areas or sectors of the economy are these remittances spent on, and why must the government take interest in the flows of remittances?
So that figure constitutes about 7.4% of GDP. So that is a huge size in terms of our GDP contribution. The sectors that this goes in directly, like I said, it goes to the household. So IOM study that was done in 2017 realized that remittances nearly doubled household income. So we are seeing that at the household level, a lot of consumption is taking place because of these remittances that are sent in. We also see that a lot of this goes in to support the payment of medical bills. If we look at the economic or the analysis around the decision to migrate, we see that at times and in most cases, it's a family decision. And once the migrant is successful in this journey, the transfers normally come in to support the household. So you see monies that are being brought in to pay medical bills, to pay school fees, to support the family business, to invest in agriculture, support the construction of family homes and what have you. But then also, most importantly, we see a lot of money is also going in for funerals and then church projects and what have you. So these are the areas where the remittances are going into. And from IOM, we see that very limited amount is used on savings and investments. And this is why, together with our stakeholders, we are advocating that we try to introduce remittance-backed products to make sure we cash in on these flows.
And we need to increase the $3.8 billion, right? So then we recognize that monies go through informal channels. So how do we formalize the informal market, so to speak?
Thank you, Daryl. What we see is that from the analysis and the projection that has been done, if we are able to translate the flows that go through the informal channels into the formal, we could double the amount that we're seeing in remittances. So for instance, you have a relative in the UK, and then you call to say, oh, can you please send me $200? Okay, I know this Alaji in Tudu, go and see this Alaji, and then you could pick up the same amount. And these monies are not going through the mainstream financial sector, so we could pick up these flows and have them fully recorded. What the government can do is to begin to talk to the users of these services. What we know is that from the interviews that we have done, cost of transaction is a major driver to why people will use the informal channels.
That's true.
Then we also know that issues around KYC, being able to produce some form of identification is also a major driver. And I would want to believe once we make progress with the national identification system, we will be able to address issues of KYC. Then we also see issues around trust with the financial system, that most people don't have that enough trust in the financial system to be able to send money through the mainstream financial sector. It would take a lot of awareness. It would take a lot of sensitization.
Right.
And that's what IOM, together with our stakeholders, are doing as part of the International Day of Family Remittances.
All right, so finally tonight, what next beyond this year's campaign, and how can government leverage remittances to drive development?
Thank you. Beyond the day, what we also have set up is the National Remittance Task Force. And this task force has been set with support from the International Federation of Agricultural Development, IFAD. And the task force has been meeting in the last 2 months to try to see how we could come up with recommendations working with government to leverage remittances for development. So the next phase will be to work with all the stakeholders in the space, from remittance service providers, from telecom operators, from the government side, and from development partners on how we could address the bottlenecks in terms of remittances, reduce the cost of transaction, which globally per the SDG target is about 5%, and even much more down to 3% in the years to come. So this is what the focus is. This is what the energies are being channeled into to make sure we reduce the cost of sending remittances. And what does that mean? What that means is that we free up money for the recipients of the remittances, because the 7% that was paid in cost of transaction could be added up to whatever is being received at the end of the day. What we're also finally advocating for is some form of a price comparison site, because we know there are various corridors through which monies are sent, but then how much does it cost us when we are using these channels? So for instance, if I'm using World Remit, or I'm using Small World, or I'm using MoneyGram, how much is it going to cost me? So if the regulator is able to put together some form of a price comparison site, then from the sending side, they know that if I'm sending in $100, at the end of the day, this is what is going to get to the family back home. Then we'll be able to make sure there's competition and then increase whatever comes to the household level. Thank you very much, Darryl.
Right, and I don't know if it's okay to say Happy International Day for family remittances, but thank you.
Yes, and for us, that will go to the migrants that we work with. It will also go to the migrant sending households. And you know, Ghana is a major sender of migrants.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric Kwame Akumanyu, who is the Migration and Development Officer at the International Organization for Migration. Great to speak to you. You're watching Business Live here on JoyNews. We are taking a short break. We have some news from the railway sector up next to stay. Welcome back to Business Live. Ghana's railway sector is to receive a boost in the coming months as the Ministry of Railways has signed an MOU with Global Railway Engineering. Now, Ghana needs an estimated investment of $50 million. Sector Minister Joe Gatti explained that the agreement will ensure knowledge sharing and local assembling of rail products.
The Ministry of Railways Development has signed an MOU with the Global Railway Engineering Ghana for the establishment of a local assembly plant for railway equipment and wagons in Ghana. Sector Minister Joe Gatti explains the partnership will complement efforts in expanding Ghana's railway sector.
This MOU gives them an exclusivity of 4 months. And within 4 months, we expect that they would have finished their necessary feasibility study and would have decided whether we intend to go ahead or not. The government of Ghana has responsibility under this MOU to provide facilities, to give them information, and to give them facilities where they can assemble the plant. We will leave it to them to look at our facilities in Tema, the DMU workshop, our facilities in Iskado at location, and also our facilities in Takoradi. After the 4-month exclusivity period, there's an opportunity to extend it further, depending on how far we've reached.
Joy Business is learning the local assembling plant will enjoy an exclusivity of 4 months, upon which the Global Railway Engineering Ghana embarks on a feasibility study. Dr. Jimin Heyman is director of the Global Railway Engineering Ghana.
What we are trying to do is we want to bring everything here. Number one, assembling it here would create opportunities of employment here. And secondly, and probably the most important, is that we are thinking about technology transfer.
So far, the government has injected a little over $1 billion to the expansion and rehabilitation of the Accra-Tema and Accra-Nsawam railway lines, seeking to build a network of over 3,500 kilometers.
Now, certified hospitality trainer with the International Labour Organization, Dr. Joseph Mensah, has urged hoteliers to put in place cost-cutting measures to ensure their businesses survive the COVID-19 pandemic. Some hotels are reopening after months of shutting down due to the pandemic. Dr. Mensah says hotel managers must adhere to prudent management practices, as it would take at least a year or two for the hospitality sector to return to normal. He spoke to me earlier on the marketplace. Okay, unfortunately, we can't hear him there. Well, let's move on. Rubber plantations are reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Leading rubber producer, Ghana Rubber Estate Limited, says the pandemic has caused a profit loss of 25 million euros so far. The managing director, Lionel Barr, has been speaking to Inathalia Kwanzaa in this report.
Mr. Barrow says Grill has had its businesses closed, production scaled back, travel and shipping disrupted, and events cancelled and postponed since February.
We just built a new factory that we inaugurated in January, and we had to stop it for 2 weeks in February. So you can imagine you do an investment of 25 million euro and you have to stop it 3 months later. So this was a very huge drop in our sales. It has affected a lot our turnover, and it continues as the second trend of the disease arrives in Europe and North America and South America. Then globally today, we are expecting a drop of the turnover about 25 million euros for the year. So this is enormous for a company like us. And we need to fix this huge drop of turnover, trying to preserve our business for the future. Preserving our business is preserving our suppliers and preserving our employees.
He was speaking when the president of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry and some executives visited the company's head office in Takoradi to assess the impact of the pandemic on business. Nana Dr. Aboagye-Wiafe I is the president of the chamber.
As part of our work, what we do is that we cannot sit in our various offices and know what is happening here and know their challenges. That's why we have come here. As they have told us, we are going to put them together and issue as a communique to government and also push it to the president himself, because this is a very serious issue and it is a critical issue and we need to handle it on their behalf. Because of the pandemic, it has also affected their production, and there is the likelihood that they will reduce the numbers in terms of the employees. And we want to say that if the government stimulus package will be very much appreciated to let them be sustained in business so that they can improve what they are doing for the economy.
Grill is expecting 25 million euro drop in their total turnover for the year. Inathalia Kwanzaa, JoyNews, Western Region.
And tonight we're hearing the cost of suits against the Bank of Ghana reduced significantly last year. It dropped from almost 25 million cedis down to 64 million cedis in 2018. JoyNews has more.
The regulator explained in its annual report that these are pending legal suits. The necessary payments are yet to be done. It added that these are mainly cases that are brought against the Bank of Ghana in relation to the performance of its functions, contract entered into by the central bank, and workers who are alleging wrongful dismissals. A careful look at the number showed some decline in these legal claims. It is not clear for now whether the Bank of Ghana is being more tactful with respect to how it regulates the banking sector, or doing more of out-of-court settlement, or maybe it is better regulation of the banking sector. The Bank of Ghana is currently in court with some financial institutions over the revocation of their licenses. One is not sure whether these cases could end up with huge financial compensation, which could hit the Bank of Ghana's bottom line badly. High legal claims or suits could be worrying for the Bank of Ghana in situations where it ends up losing these cases, and how these funds could have been used for other programs will be going into settlements. The Bank of Ghana ended last year with a profit of 1.8 billion Ghana cedis, coming from the previous year where it actually recorded a loss. But despite these strong earnings, the Bank of Ghana decided not to declare dividend to its shareholder, that is government.
And that's Business Live tonight. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business.